Today we're going to be doing my first ever if you liked this, watch that, or if you liked that movie, watch this movie. How do people phrase it normally? How do you say it to where it makes sense? Because I'm doing if you liked that movie, watch this movie. It doesn't sound right in my head, but I don't know what everyone else does. I looked it up, but I can't figure it out. What's the proper terminology for if you like this, watch that? I don't know, but you know what I mean. I'm going to be taking your movie requests and sharing multiple movies that I think are similar to said movie, right? We all understand the concept of these videos. And I'm gonna be doing multiple movies per movie. So we're gonna do it a little bit quick and a little rapid fire, so I'm not gonna be spending too long explaining and over explaining the movie recommendations, but there will be so many movie recommendations in this video, but given that we're only gonna do 5 of your movie requests. In addition to giving you tons of new movie recommendations, I'm also going to be sharing where they are streaming. And if you're not based in the US, that's okay because today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. So hopefully I can save you a little bit of search time on your streaming if you want to watch any of these. Now NordVPN is currently doing an exclusive deal just for creators, so you can only get this deal at my link, and it is 4 extra bonus months for free. I'm really sorry about my cat. Going a little nuts right now. Now NordVPN is really great if you are into streaming, you obviously love movies, you watch my channel, and you want to access even more movies and TV shows without having to buy them. With just one click on NordVPN, you can put your location to anywhere in the world and then you have access to all of their streaming. A VPN is also really great and, in my opinion, an essential tool to protect your data and privacy by blocking your IP address. Also, NordVPN's threat protection blocks malware and cyber attacks and is always running in the background, so you never have to worry about your internet safety. So make sure you get the exclusive NordVPN deal from my link, nordvpn.com/PossessedbyHorror. You can only get it here, 4 extra bonus months for free, and it's completely risk-free with NordVPN's money-back guarantee. So the first movie we're going to talk about is definitely one of the most requested that you guys submitted over on Instagram stories back in November. I asked you in November. I'm finally doing it now. And that is Barbarian, of course. We all want to experience what Barbarian was for the first time again. I would pay good money to watch that movie for the first time again. It's incredible. Now, for the movie recommendations, I'm allowing myself to have multiple things from the movie that inspire other recommendations, okay? So for this one, I'm thinking tone change, you know, there's like a shift in tone of the movie all of a sudden, possibly a little misleading plot. So the first 20 to 30 minutes are a completely different movie from the rest of the movie. Or there's some kind of twist that is similar. And I'm not going to be specific on that because obviously I'm not here to spoil any of these movies, including the ones you want recommendations from. So my first recommendation is definitely the one I think is the most similar, I would say. It's so hard because Barbarian is so unique and it really happens in 3 acts. And there's nothing that compares to that, but I think when it comes to tone shift, tone change of the movie, you know, you have like a certain tone in the beginning of the movie and then all of a sudden it's like, what, we're like taking a turn here. And I think the one that matches up with that the most is Fresh. This has a very misleading beginning, almost a rom-com style beginning, and I really liked that and I loved the tone change about 20-30 minutes in. You think it's a classic love story of this girl who meets a guy, she's almost giving up on dating, but then she meets this perfect man at a grocery store and it turns out he's not perfect, but we don't know that for a long time, and I love that because it gives you so much ample like build up an opportunity to really wonder what is going to happen because it's marketed as like a horror movie. I do wish this movie pushed it even farther. I don't think it pushes it as far as Barbarian by any means, but as far as the tone change and like the twist and the misleading plot, I think it fits perfectly. Next up, I had to make this a recommendation for Barbarian because it's just bizarre. Barbarian's bizarre. Tusk is bizarre. Another thing Tusk has is that shock factor. I think sometimes we want that in a movie where your jaw drops, and that is in Tusk for sure. Like if you want to be uncomfortable like you were when you watched Barbarian, you're gonna feel that way with Tusk, let me tell you. Also, again, Tusk has that build-up, and obviously we all kind of know what the movie is about now, and they give a lot away in the trailer, so like I'm still not gonna spoil it or like say anything. But the buildup of the story in the beginning of this podcaster who goes to visit this old man to hear his story and to get his story and like share his story, and then the old man is he's not a nice old man. You know, he has ulterior motives to inviting Justin Long over. Justin Long also is in Barbarian, so if you're a fan of Justin Long, it's like, obviously. So I just feel like that one works as a recommendation, you know? Bizarre atmosphere, shocking imagery, kind of disturbing. You know, I feel like Barbarian and Tusk both have that disturbing element to it. Okay, the last recommendation I have, if you want a movie that feels like Barbarian, this one's probably the most like stretch of a recommendation, and that is Don't Breathe. This one I actually don't love, but I do feel like it works for this category. Again, shocking and unexpected twist. I feel like the unexpectedness of this is what matches up with Barbarian to me, and gives like a similar experience, especially with what the twist is, right? I'm not, again, gonna say anything about it, but if you know, you know. Also has disturbing elements to it. I don't think the movie in itself is like that strong. I don't, like I said, love this movie, but I do feel like it is a journey. And it's shocking, and it, you know, it of course follows three people who break into this blind man's home thinking they can just rob him, but he of course is kind of prepared for this, and he is not going down without a fight. He's not going to let them leave with the stuff without putting up a fight. So there is a fight that ensues, and then some. Again, you think it's going one way. You think it's like basic, like, oh, they're there to break into his house, and then he like fights them off. It's much more than that, and it's a little jarring, a little shocking. And to me, gets a little bit big concept for what the movie is. Also, Don't Breathe 2 is garbage. Don't watch it. That was one of the worst movies I've ever seen, just in relation to the first movie. And if you've seen it, you know why. I reviewed it in case you're interested, but it's just horrible. It's not a terrible executed movie, but it just plot-wise makes no sense as a sequel. So a movie that not many of you wanted recommendations for, but one of you did, and I see you, because this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I see you, thank you. And I probably have the most recommendations for this one, and no one really cared, but I think you will care. You will care when you hear what it is, and it's Misery. You want a movie like Misery. Of course, this scenario is an abducted writer from a super fan, and she's, you know, trying to get him to write the book, and he's held hostage. So we're gonna talk about some hostage or like abduction type movies. First up, we have P2. This is a classic hostage situation. Takes place on Christmas. This girl is trying to get home and her car won't start. And so she goes up to the security guard to get help, and he is her #1 fan, like in Misery. Not really, he's just obsessed with her. So it's like that obsession hostage situation. So it kind of gives the same atmosphere of like feeling trapped with someone who's obsessed with you. Like that's, you know, just like in Misery. Next up is a movie I bet you didn't even think I have seen, because it came out in 1962. If you've been around for a long time, you know I don't really watch older movies, especially from the 60s, but there are a lot of 60s movies that I enjoy, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is one of them. Now, classic movie, Bette Davis, Joan Crawford. Basically, one sister is in a wheelchair from a car accident, and she's trying to get revenge on her sister, who's actually her caregiver, and her sister is an old child star who's trying to get back to being famous, like a new claim to fame, trying to like get famous, and she's hiding her sister from visitors, doctors, and things like that. So they're battling each other, but they still have to like live together. So to me, the atmosphere is very, very similar to that of Misery, where you have one plotting against the other one is like hiding them away, and obviously one's in a wheelchair. It just, they're basically the same, except they're sisters, and of course Misery, they're not. Next recommendation is 10 Cloverfield Lane. Anytime I can recommend this movie, I do. You do not have to see other Cloverfield movies to watch this one. It's its own thing. And I wish more people knew about it and watched it without the attachment to Cloverfield. Because most of the time in the movie, you're like, is this a Cloverfield movie? Like, what is this? This doesn't even work in the universe. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Goodman, incredible cast. But also that feeling of being trapped and you don't know who to trust and you don't know what is real. Of course, there are scenes in Misery where Annie Wilkes is lying to Paul Sheldon, saying that she, you know, called for help and things like that. So it's very similar tone in that, where you don't know who you're supposed to trust or what even is real, or how it's even a Cloverfield movie. Next up is a more disturbing movie than Misery, but I gotta put it in here. Funny Games. The original or the remake, I love both. I think they're both very comparable. They're made by the same director, so you know, they're basically shot for shot the same movie. Now this is, you know, pushing the limits a little bit more of what it means to be like a hostage. It's a home invasion movie technically, I would say, where the family is taken hostage by these two young men who are just playing games with them. And it's definitely more psychologically disturbing than Misery, but it's a similar situation. A little hostage. They're just a little bit more intense than Annie Wilkes, if you can believe that. I also think Creep is a good recommendation for something like Misery as well. It's not exactly the same. It's probably like the most different out of all of these recommendations, but I do feel like it's similar in being trapped with a strange person. You know what I mean? You're trying to be polite at first, but you're still with a weirdo and you don't know what they're capable of. It's kind of giving that same kind of suspense. And lastly, for Misery, I told you I had a bunch for Misery because it's one of my favorites, and I feel like there's a lot of movies that kind of do this hostage situation really well. The Perfect Host. This is a thriller movie, so not a horror. Not all of my recommendations, by the way, are going to be horror movies, just mostly. So The Perfect Host is about a guy who's running from the cops, and he cons his way into attending a dinner party, but the host ends up being a creepy dude. He's a weirdo, you know, strange person. He's not exactly that nice. And this again has that captivity, like held hostage situation scenario that Misery also has. So next movie, you guys wanted recommendations that are similar to, a lot of you wanted this one, Final Destination. And why wouldn't you? Because Final Destination, I mean, I'm gonna say it right now, no one can do it as well as Final Destination. You might think they're cheesy movies. Wait till I tell you what movies are, in my opinion, similar. Because Final Destination, not so cheesy in comparison. So that's your warning. These recommendations are not to be taken seriously, okay? These are technically bad movies, but you wanted ones that had a death game in them, or like you can't escape death, death is the villain, something along those lines, or at least something that feels similar. First up, Polaroid. I told you not to take it seriously, okay? I know these are bad, but sometimes we want that, right? Sometimes we want a cheesy, bad, weird movie that doesn't make sense and isn't that scary, and it's just easy to watch and not that serious. And that's what these recommendations are going to be, okay? So Polaroid, whoever gets their picture taken by this Polaroid camera ends up dying, right? So it's like that inescapable death for whatever reason, right? So they're cursed to die. And I just feel like that's kind of similar to Final Destination, because in that you cheat death, right? And then it comes after you, and it's like you can't really escape it because it's always gonna come back to you at some point. And Polaroid is kind of like that, right? Just go with it. Next we have Countdown. I think Countdown is kind of the most similar. Again, you can't really compare anything to Final Destination. It's very original of a concept. But Countdown is where an app accurately predicts when you're going to die. And you know, it starts off as a game. It starts off as like a group of friends just downloading this app, like, ooh, when are you gonna die? And stuff like that. And then of course people do end up dying at that time. And then they're like, oh, this is like supernatural. So this is like a death is coming trope. That feels like Final Destination. It's like they know it's coming, they know who's next because of the timeline, right? Countdown, it tells you when you're gonna die. So it feels like the same kind of death game. Truth or Dare, death game, right? You have to play or you die. That's very, very simple. You have to tell the truth or death comes for you for some reason. Again, you can't escape death. It's just another one of those death games that just works in the Final Destination world. This one might be the least like Final Destination, but I had to include it because it has a special place in my heart for whatever reason. The Bye Bye Man. Terrible. I know. Again, sometimes we want that. Okay, we're not pretentious snobs, movie snobs here on my channel. If you are, sorry, not the place really for you, because I will unironically watch The Bye-Bye Man. Now this one, you know, obviously is a contagious curse that puts the Bye-Bye Man in your head. He's like a demon, right? And once he's in there, you can't get him out, and you end up doing terrible things, either to yourself or other people. Of course, don't think it, don't say it. Famous line from it. It's cheesy. It's a cheesy movie, but again, one of those things where like you can't escape it. Once you're participating in it, once you have, you know, you have the Bye-Bye Man coming for you, or like it's in your head, you can't get rid of it, just like in Final Destination. I don't know. Next up, some of you want some recommendations that are like Triangle, and you know, there are the obvious ones and I'll get to those, but Triangle, as you know, is also one of my favorite movies of all time, so I wanted to put it in this video first, my first video of doing this, because it's just one of the best movies ever. Now this one, of course, well, this might be a little bit of a spoiler for Triangle if you haven't watched it, but I have recommended it for years. So if you've been around and you still haven't watched it at this point, that's kind of on you. You know, if you're a new viewer, skip forward like 30 seconds and then go watch it at some point. Okay, so time bending, right? It's like reality shifting, mind bending, questioning reality. That's the theme of Triangle, okay? And these ones specifically are going to be hard to explain. Even just putting them in association with Triangle, I think might be a little bit of a spoiler, so it's up to you if you want to watch this section of the video. I'm going to try my best not to describe them too heavily, so you're going to have to go into these movies without knowing information, and I think that's the best, honestly, for these kind of reality, questioning reality type movies. First up, we have Brightwood. This is the most recent movie, and this one came out last year, and I was a big fan of this. It's a lower budget movie. This one is about a couple who goes on a jog, you know, and they get stuck in a time loop. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because obviously it's one of those, you just don't want to know too much about these movies. Obvious choice. Everyone always brings this up when they talk about Triangle or vice versa, and that is Coherence. If you haven't watched Coherence and you've seen Triangle and love it, what are you doing? You gotta watch both. Like, they just go hand in hand. Coherence is a little bit more like questioning reality, and I love the atmosphere of this one. It feels very realistic. There's minimal script to this one, so most of it was improv. It takes place at a dinner party, so it's very intimate, and of course, weird things happen, you're questioning reality. It's one of the best type of movies ever. Another one I've mentioned before talking about Triangle, and I will continue to mention, is Time Crimes. It's a great foreign film. I highly, highly recommend it if you haven't. It's very, very similar to Triangle. This one involves a little bit of time travel. Okay, so it's very interesting. It's an interesting one, but if you've seen it, you know how it kind of relates back to Triangle. So next up is Stay. Great, incredible movie. Mind-bending, okay? You're constantly looking at all the details, trying to figure out what is even going on, because you're questioning reality, right? You're like, I have no idea. So this one's a weird one, and I think it has a similar tone when it comes to the drama aspect, so it's a little bit more thriller than horror, and Triangle, I think, leans a little bit more thriller than horror as well. There's only like one scene really that could be considered, well, there's a couple scenes that are like a little horror, but they fit in a thriller movie too, you know? Same thing with Stay. It's definitely more of like a drama thriller, psychological thriller. So the next one is a very slow burn drama. Has a little bit of romance in it too. I never recommend movies with like heavy romance because they're not my thing, but Another Earth. And the only reason I'm recommending this is because I love Triangle and I love Another Earth. They are different, but there's something about Another Earth that I just have to talk about, okay? This is like a strange reality where we find a duplicate Earth out there. We can see it, and it's, you know, getting closer and closer, and soon we can like look at the Earth with telescopes and things, and then it basically follows this girl starring Britt Marling, who was amazing. She's so talented, and she applies to go to that Earth, so they're sending people to go there, and it is so bizarre. It's so up my alley, and I had to recommend it under Triangle. in case you haven't seen it, because I like both and maybe you would like both. I don't know. Perfect Blue. This is an anime. Never recommend animes because I don't really watch animes that much, but this is from the 90s. It was incredible. It's such a beautiful movie, first of all. This one is about more like questioning reality. So this follows a pop star who quits doing music and decides to go into acting, and she gets cast on this murder mystery show. Do look up trigger warnings for this movie because it can be kind of intense, but I'm so happy I watched it because it is just so bizarre. And again, you think you know like what's happening, but I just love where this movie goes. Like, it is just so strange in the end that I was obsessed with it. Okay, last up for Triangle, I'm gonna recommend Enemy. Now, this is a neo-noir psychological thriller, okay? So it's a little bit more of a slow burn, a little bit more drama heavy. And this stars Jake Gyllenhaal, so if you're a fan of him, I think he's great in this one. And this is where a man discovers a lookalike and he starts getting entangled in his life. Like, he's just very fascinated in his life and like what he's doing, as you would be if you found someone who was like literally your twin. Like, they look just like you. Like, what's going on? I think it's best not to know too much information about all of those movies, so please don't look more into them. Just go watch them. They're just great if you want mind-bending, questioning reality type movies like Triangle that really like makes you think. Check out those ones. Okay, lastly, this is why mostly horror is in the title, because you guys surprisingly want Hunger Games recommendations. Hunger Games. I'm here for it. I love the Hunger Games. I was so excited that so many of you, well, so many of you, I think 3 people, requested this one because I could come up with movies for you. And any chance I get to talk about Hunger Games, obviously. I think I missed the window to review Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I still haven't watched it. I know, fake fan, right? It's because I didn't read the book and I was still debating if I was gonna read the book first or watch the movie, but I think I'm just gonna watch the movie. I probably won't review it now because it's definitely irrelevant. So anyway, this obviously fight to the death games, right? Also dystopian. I'm gonna take that into consideration when coming up with these recommendations. First up, obvious one, Battle Royale. How could I talk about Hunger Games without Battle Royale? A lot of people argue that Suzanne Collins was very inspired by Battle Royale. Now, this is a Japanese movie where 42 ninth graders are sent to this island and only one is allowed to survive. So it's literally just like Hunger Games in the sense they're all sent off and they have to kill each other until there's only one left. It is much more violent. Like, I think it is a horror movie in the traditional sense. I think some argue it's a little bit more action, but action horror, you know, it's just the lines blur on genres all the time. I'm just trying to give you an accurate depiction. It's definitely more horrific than the Hunger Games. Next, we have the Belko Experiment. This is one that I saw in theaters, didn't love, and then I bought it and I like it. I like it now and I have rewatched it. It's just good. It's just easy. This one's like an easy comfort watch. Is that disturbing to say it's comforting, but it's like an easy watch. This is a fight to the death game where it's basically Hunger Games if it took place in an office building, in the workplace, where all these employees are basically told to kill each other off or they will be killed. And they're given different instructions, like you must kill 3 people, you must kill 5 people, and like all these kind of things. And then, yeah, there's ways that they could kill them. So also, I don't want to say it's dystopian in any sense, but it does feel that way, especially like towards the end and like the explanation of what's going on and why they're there and everything. I don't know. I feel like it could kind of be a little dystopian, but mostly it's just a fight to the death game, right? Everyone's just trying to survive in this office building. Next, we have The Running Man. I know. Bizarre. Also old. Arnold Schwarzenegger. This movie is not that good. I'm gonna say I loved the book by Stephen King. I think The Running Man by Stephen King is so good. I love the dystopian nature of this movie. Basically, prisoners have the opportunity to play in this like dangerous game in order to escape death. So if they're like sentenced to death, I don't know if that makes any sense. They can run to escape death. It's funny because it's actually set in 2019. So, you know, the future. And I do think it's funny because obviously it was written in the 80s and the movie came out in the 80s, but it's like they think that in 2019 we're obsessed with media and like entertainment and everything's like a TV show, including watching prisoners run for their lives. And I'm like, you know, that's not that far off. I think we would watch that if we could. You know, we would watch the Hunger Games. Don't lie. Don't say you wouldn't watch the Hunger Games. Maybe because they're children. Maybe not, but if they were adults, you would watch it. Okay, last up for recommendation for Hunger Games, and the last one in this video, Squid Game. obviously. Again, this one definitely not a horror movie, but it does have some like elements. It's like a thriller, drama thriller, I think, because like it's very suspenseful. And this of course is a death game. I would say a little bit dystopian. This follows 456 contestants who are all struggling financially, and you can sign up for Squid Games, where it's basically childhood games that are made deadly. And not everyone can win, okay? And it's like this huge prize of money, so that's why they have that incentive to sign up, even though they figure out soon enough that you actually die if you lose. So it's like, is it worth it? Up to you. I loved the Squid Game show, the scripted show. I haven't watched the challenge just because it feels too fake for me, and I love reality TV, okay? And I know it's fake sometimes. Sometimes. I like to think I watch shows that aren't fake, you know? Vanderpump Rules isn't fake, okay? Below Deck, that's real. Big Brother, not real actually. But I just think the challenge, I've heard things about how they actually, you know, obviously they're not at risk. They can't do that. They're not at risk of dying. They literally can't do that. So for me, it takes the tension away. It's like in the show, the scripted show, it's like, yeah, these people are actually, you know, the characters are dying. That's what makes it so tense. But in a reality TV show, I feel like it doesn't translate the same. Too many people. It's just too much. I don't know. You tell me what you thought of the challenge if you watched it. Not the challenge, but Squid Games, the challenge. If it's worth checking out, I don't know. I like the scripted show, but I don't think I'd like the reality show. So I'm already working on part 2 currently as we speak. So I'm hoping to do these more regularly. If you want to leave some movie requests down below for, you know, some recommendations that are similar in either tone or setting or vibe, whatever, just some ones that you want to have that are similar so you can experience what it's like to watch it for the first time again. Of course, if you have anything to add to this video, any of the recommendations or, you know, movies that I talk about in today's video, please leave it in a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.